Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new around here, my name is Joseph.
And my name's Olathe, and we're so excited that you're here on Desire of the Nations YouTube channel.
Yeah guys, so before we continue on with this video, make sure that you subscribe. Hit that red subscribe button right now. Like, do it right this second. Right now. As I'm saying this right now, hit that subscribe button. But we're super pumped for this video. It's a super hot topic. I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is a hot topic that has kind of been in a lot of conversations in our generation. A lot of people have this question, and maybe you've seen this come up too, or you've been talking about it.
So today we are going to be talking about why why we got married young in our story.
So how old were we when we got married?
I was 19 years old and you were 22 years old.
You had this moment of panic right now.
I know. So we've been married for about, I would say about 2.5 years now, or almost 2.5 years now.
For sure.
Yeah. But it's so funny. The reason why I say that is because I always forget how long we've been married. I always think it's just been a year.
And I always think it's been 10.
Yeah. We've been married for about 2.5 years now. We did get married pretty young. I was 19 years old. Olathe was 22 years old. I was coming up on my 20th birthday. So we're about 2.5 years apart. But really, our story is really different. I mean, the way that God brought us together, the way that everything happened, you just seen that God's hand was just all over it. Yeah. I mean, God supernaturally came in the mix of our relationship and did something so spectacular that you knew it was only God that could have done this. Like, it was only God that he could have got married at 19 years old. It was only God that she could have got married at 22 years old. Just the way that kind of all that came together. So we're going to be sharing with you guys our story and kind of how we met and how we got together. That way you kind of further understand why we got married young.
Yeah, so we have talked about how we've met before on our YouTube channel. It was a while ago though, and we didn't really go too much into detail about everything that happened.
So I guess I'll go ahead and start the story off. December 3rd, 2017 is actually the day that I met Olathe. So that's the day that I met her. I was actually on a trip with my pastor from California. We flew out to Chicago. I flew out last minute. Let me tell you, I wasn't even supposed to be on that trip at all. I had went to an all-night prayer meeting at my pastor's house. And I remember we were praying for him because he was supposed to be leaving on a trip. He was going to be preaching in the city of Chicago. So we're all praying for him. And he ends up telling me right there, he's like, hey, do you want to go with me in the morning to Chicago? And so I'm just thinking like, yeah, sure. So I ran home, I packed super quick, and I'm super excited because obviously like God is like giving me this vision for the nations. And I'm like, yes, God, like, you know, I could mark Chicago off the map, you know? And little did I know what would happen in Chicago. And that's when I met Olathe.
Yeah. And I guess just to give you my perspective during this time, I was going through a lot. December 3rd, 2017, you know it's a special day when you remember it like that. I remember I was on my way to church. I was not expecting, you know, Joseph to be there, obviously. I don't even know if I knew that there was a guest speaker in that Sunday. I actually was running late to church. So I find myself in an Uber. I'm on my way to church. Mind you, my parents are the pastors. Anyways, I'm in the Uber and I'm just praying and I'm just crying out to God. And I'm actually thinking about, God, like, when am I going to meet the one? When am I going to, you know, date again? When am I going to feel okay again? Because I was just in a really rough season. And I remember telling God in that car, God, you're going to have to work on me for like 7 years to get me like ready to date somebody again. I am not ready. That I know for sure. But you know what, God? I want you to be my joy. I want you to be my focus. So help me to focus on you. And so I get out that Uber car. I go into church. And Joseph is the very first person that I see. And I'm not going to lie, like, he obviously had my attention right off the bat. But as soon as I saw him, the very first thing I thought was, no, Olathe, you're going to focus on God. I thought that Joseph was there as a plot from the enemy to distract me. But little did I know it was actually God orchestrating something really beautiful.
Yeah, so continuing on, we end up talking, meeting, and I remember when I spoke with her, I just felt like, man, I don't know, I feel like this was a God ordained kind of moment here,
Yeah.
God orchestrated moment, and I felt like maybe we would run into each other again in the future, or I really didn't know what to think too much of it. I mean, I had just met her. And so what ended up happening was I ended up extending my flight, staying for a few more days to be able to talk to her, get to know her a little bit. And so when I ended up doing that, man, God kind of just really moved in a powerful way, because I had kind of went through a really rough season in my life as well, kind of leading up to these moments before I met Olathe. I came to this place in my personal life where I said, God, I don't want to play any games with relationships. I'm not trying to just have another girlfriend. I'm not trying to just, have a girlfriend in general. I want a wife, God. Like, I want to get married. And I knew that it was God's call on my life to be married, because I knew that whatever I was going to do for God, God was sending a helpmate to walk alongside me and do it with me. I began to pray on just meeting her and really just take it to God. And I began to just be bold before God and say, God, you know what? If she's my wife, you've got to show me in some crazy, spectacular way or something. And this is where things kind of get a little bit weird and crazy.
Yeah.
So I began to just pray and intercede. And I mean, man, on that I would consider the trip that I took to Chicago a prayer trip, because that's really what I was doing a lot of the time that I was there in the hotel room, praying, having worship music on, just like for 3 hours, just praying and getting a hold of God, seeking God. And so I took it to God. I said, God, you've got to show me in some spectacular, supernatural way that I'm going to marry this girl. And so as I began to pray, I just prayed. I said, God, you know what? Give me a dream or something that she's going to be my wife, right? And so I started getting ready for bed, and I couldn't sleep. I was tossing, I was turning a little bit, because then I started to think, if I have a dream, maybe it was just for me. Maybe it's just because I was thinking about it. So then I started to pray, God, you know what? If this girl is from you, if you want her to be my wife, don't just give me a dream, but give her a dream too. Give her a dream that it's going to be her wedding day. Just give her a dream or something, God. Because I felt like if I fell asleep and I dreamt about it, it would just be because I was thinking about it, or, when it's just on your mind and you were thinking about it the night before, so you dream about it. So I was preaching at a youth event that her parents' church was hosting the following day. And I remember right after the service, me, her, and her sister decided to all hang out. And so as we're hanging out, her sister decides to pull up 100 questions to ask a new person when you first meet them, because obviously I'm the new guy in town. So we're all just having fun, we're laughing, we're eating, and her sister's just asking all these questions. And I remember it got to a certain question.
Yeah.
Where her sister asked,
a really random question.
Did you have a dream last night? And Olathe didn't want to answer.
Yeah, I was just embarrassed. I don't know, did I look embarrassed? How did I?
Yeah, you look like shy. Your cheeks were turning red.
Yeah,
and so obviously that's going to give any guy signals. Like, if I just prayed for her to have a dream last night that she was going to be my wife, like, so my heart starts pounding. My heart starts fluttering. And I'm just thinking, like, no, you have to tell me, did you have a dream last night? And she still doesn't want to say. So now my heart's pounding even harder, and she's not even understanding everything that's going on right now.
Idea.
Yeah.
I was picking up on it though, because I'm like, why is this guy so persistent on the embarrassing dream I had?
So then I asked her again. I'm like, please, you've got to tell me what your dream was. So she ends up finally telling me what her dream was.
That God had answered his prayer. I didn't know it was his prayer at the time, but I told him I had a dream that it was my wedding day. And it was just beautiful. It was so full of peace, and I could just feel God in that dream.
So in that moment, I felt the presence of God kind of just fill that atmosphere that we were in. And I remember I told her what I had prayed for the previous night before. And we both talked about it, and we knew that it was from God. I mean, we were both kind of...
Mind you, this is the third day
Yeah.
that we knew each other. He's praying this, but I'm not even thinking that way. Like, yeah, I'm like, oh, you know, like, I'm attracted to him. He's an awesome man of God. He's kind of blowing my mind with just how on fire he is. But I'm not thinking, you know, am I going to marry this guy? I'm not thinking like, you know, I'm thinking this guy's in California. I'm probably never going to see him again once he leaves. But I'm just enjoying that friendship that we were building. I'm enjoying just the faith that he's stirring in me.
Yeah, so as we talked about it, I mean, our minds were both kind of just blown.
Yeah.
We felt kind of just nervous. I didn't know what to feel,
Yeah.
excited, you know? And so I remember I told her something. I was a little bold.
A little bold.
Just a little bold.
Oh
I remember
my
I told her, I go, look, I need to tell you something. I love you. I said it. I let out those 3 words after 3 days of only knowing her. But this was the reason that I told her I love you. I said, look, it only took me a moment to fall completely and madly in love with Jesus. And in the same way, it only took me 3 days to fall in love with you. I knew that God was calling us together and that God was orchestrating this relationship. And after I left home, that wasn't the only way that God showed us that this relationship was from him.
Yeah.
We've seen confirmation after confirmation after confirmation.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most awesome things that blows my mind is Olathe is actually a journaler. She really likes to journal and write all her, you know, thoughts and stuff down like that. She had actually wrote in her journal a few years before she met me that God would give her a husband with the heart of David and the faithfulness of Joseph. And for most of you who don't know my full name, my name is Joseph David Santos. So she actually
crazy.
wrote down my name in her journal.
Yeah.
God.
Like, God, give me Joseph David. Basically.
Yeah, basically like God. And God, I feel like God was almost like, little do you know, you know?
I
Yeah.
know. If only I knew. So there's all these confirmations, all these signs that God was showing us, but this isn't just after we met. This is things that were spoken before we even knew each other. So my grandfather, 90 days before we met, I remember he looked at me. We were there for a holiday. Do you remember like what holiday?
It was Labor Day.
Labor Day. So we're there for Labor Day. My grandfather turns to me and he says, Olathe, I truly believe that in 90 days, God is going to turn things around for you. And like, just give him that. Just be praying, just be seeking him. Just give him 90 days and see what God's going to do. And I thought it was so random. Like, why 90 days? Like, maybe he was reading like one of those books, like Break Your Habit in 90 Days. I don't know. There was no way I could have expected what God was going to do. And so when we met and, you know, Joseph's telling me this, what he prayed over, I'm having these dreams. God is just filling, you know, the room that we're talking in. I remember I went back and I journaled as well when my grandfather told me that. And I literally counted every single day, like over and over. It was exactly 90 days later,
December 3rd, the Sunday that we met. Our minds were completely blown, seeing the power of God just move in and through our relationship. God showed us that we were for each other. God showed us that, and I hear a lot of people sometimes say, you know, like that it's not necessarily for everybody that God will do that for. And I understand why people may say that, but I mean, in a sense, there's their faith in believing for it.
Like, did you ask for it?
Exactly.
Are you praying?
Are you praying? Are you believing for it? Are you having the faith for it? So my encouragement to you is if God can do it for us, why can't God do it for you? Pray, believe, have faith. So one of the main reasons that we got married young was first and foremost the way that God moved. We knew that we knew that we knew that God had called us together. And number 2 is because we knew the call of God that he had on our lives. He didn't just call us together for no reason. He called us together because he had a plan, he had a destiny, and he had a purpose.
And that's a conversation that we had right off the bat of, okay, what do you feel called to? Like, what does God put on your heart? What passions do you have? What talents do you have? And when we had that conversation, we both found that we had common ground, that God had both called us to the same dream and vision.
Right when we got married, we got to Actually, it was super cool. We had an awesome opportunity to speak in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And we had an awesome opportunity to speak at a few other churches, and just seeing God open up doors and seeing God use our lives right off the bat as soon as we got married. It was just so awesome. And then even then, a year into our marriage is when we launched Desire of the Nations.
Yeah.
So it was something that had been on our heart for a long time, even before we got married.
Yeah, something we'd been talking about, dreaming about, praying about, but then finally came to a tangible like place.
Yeah, heard the voice of God to move forward, to launch it, to go forward.
All right, Joseph, so be honest. How did you feel getting married young? Were you scared? Were you just excited in the moment? Like, how did you feel?
Honestly, I don't think I had a ton of feelings. I mean, obviously feelings for you. No, not in that way. I didn't have a ton of, I guess, I just don't overthink things. So I didn't have a ton of feelings on it because I knew that I knew where I was going, where God was leading.
You were sure.
Yeah, I was sure. So I didn't feel scared. I mean, I knew that God was going to provide for us no matter what.
Yeah.
I didn't feel nervous. I didn't have cold feet. I felt great. I felt awesome. I didn't care how young I was, 19 years old.
Was it a thought though? Like, wow, I'm pretty young. Like, should I wait?
And to be honest, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
I really did. I didn't. I'm getting married to the love of my life. And that's all that mattered. And that's all that counted to me. So.
Oh, I love you.
Now I'm going to ask you that question.
Yeah.
How did you feel getting married?
Well, I did think about it. I do overthink things. So I think that I initially was pretty scared. Like, you know, we had just gotten engaged, and of course I'm so excited. I'm so in love. I'm still in love. But I think that it was a thought that came to me like, wow, I'm pretty young. Like at the time when we got engaged, I was only 21 years old. I had barely turned 22 when we got married. So I was thinking about it, and I remember there was this moment I sat down with my mom, and I told her, I was like, Mom, I don't know if I'm moving too fast. Like, I don't know if, like, maybe I'm just too young. Like, maybe I need to just be wise and, like, wait. And, like, you know, even though I'm feeling just, like, this go ahead, this tug, and, like, things are just moving, you know, just so naturally, I don't know, like, is this from God? Because I feel like if it's from God, then he's going to want me to wait, you know, like, a long time. And I remember she looked at me and she was like, Olathe, you can't put God in a box. If God wants you to get married now, he's going to make a way, and he has made a way, you know, for you to get married now. And it just opened my eyes like, wow, like, I don't know why I had this misconception that if it's from God, then it's going to take a long time. And that's not true. Like, God can do whatever he wants. If I'm completely honest with you guys, when we met and when God did pull us together, it was in a time where I completely didn't feel
like it was the right time.
Yeah. I didn't think it was the right time. I didn't feel like, okay, God, it's time. I'm ready. I didn't feel ready at all. But I will say this, it was a time where I was most open to God. But I think it's because it doesn't depend on whether you feel ready or not. It depends. Are you praying?
Yeah, it depends.
Are you pressing in? Are you seeking the will of God?
Yeah. Are you walking with God? Are you walking in his presence? So I think that's what it, like she says, ultimately depends on.
So I think that this is a really hot topic in our generation today. I think because there's probably a lot of misconception, a lot of fears of getting married young, like a lot of, like, almost like a stigma tied to that. What do you think is a misconception that you've heard about getting married young?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is people automatically assume that it's not going to work. So when we got married young, we had a lot of support from our families, from our friends, from our pastors, our leaders. But we also had a lot of people who were completely against it.
Yeah.
First of all, we had only known each other 3 days in person, and we were a long distance relationship. So a lot of people were really against that. You don't really know her. She doesn't really know you. And, you know, a lot of people just coming against it. But obviously the people who were against it didn't see God move the way he did in our relationship.
Yeah.
So I think that when people came against it and when people would tell me those things, it wouldn't put any fear in me because I knew and I was sure that God had called Olathe to me, that we were meant to be. So
yeah, I think something a lot of people who had fears about us getting married young would tell me was like, you're not mature enough. Like, you don't even know yourself. Like, how could you marry someone else when you don't even know who you are? Something, again, that they weren't seeing is like, I was deeply rooted in God. Like, who I am is completely tied to who God is. So I don't need to, I feel like there's this thing like, go travel the world, find yourself, which there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe there's something wrong with that mentality. Like, why are we in this age, like, trying to find ourselves, be full of ourselves? I feel like it's more like, man, dive into God. Like,
and
cool.
Die to yourself.
Yeah, die to yourself. Like, if you know who you are in God, then as I'm coming to someone, getting married to someone who he knows who he is in God, and God is the center of the relationship.
It's a beautiful thing. So if there's any advice I think that we would be able to give you guys from our experience of getting married young, I would just say that if you guys have similar callings, that God has called that relationship together, don't wait. That's what my advice would be. Just go for it. If you know that God is calling you to marriage, if you know that God has called your relationship together, don't wait. Just go for it.
Yeah.
That's what we did. We knew that God had called us together. We knew that God had a purpose, that God had a plan over our lives. Yeah. So we didn't wait. We got married, and man, it's been probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life.
Yeah. We're not saying to get married young. We're not saying not to get married young. We're just really speaking from our own experience, giving, our thoughts on it, our advice, what God did in our lives, in our story. I think what really matters most is, what God is saying, what God is leading, what God is doing. But I will say this, don't be afraid to ask, God, give me a sign. God, do the supernatural. God, let me know without a shadow of a doubt that, God, you're calling me to this person in marriage.
So that is the reason that we got married young, and a little bit of our story. We hope that it encouraged you. We hope that it was a blessing to some of you. But guys, that is it for this video. We love you guys. We are praying for you guys, and we will see you next week. And don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.